Hello, this is a tutorial on FARMserver for analyzing data on your FARMserver account. We're assuming that you've put in the farm data, and we've covered that in another video. If you have questions, please check out our playlist or YouTube account and find those videos there on how to upload farm data from your combine. So today we're going to go into the analyzing our data. And so we're going to start here from the home page after we've logged in and click on Fields List. And here we're going to go into, it's important here to make sure the right year is selected that you're wanting to analyze. Because the data for this case is found in 2019 for this tutorial, we're going to select 2019, but for you, you just need to make sure that the year you're in or that you're wanting to analyze is selected before you start. Far as in this fields list, we're not going to really go into much here. You could go to a map view and it would show you your whole area and all your fields and where they're located. You can also show hidden fields if you've chosen to hide them, but again, we're not going into that much today. We're going to go ahead and jump right into this West 80 field and look at the data here. We start out here, we have a timeline on the left-hand side here. Where my mouse is, we can add an event with this plus sign. We can edit the field's name, tells us how many acres are inside the polygon. We can turn this timeline on or off. We can analyze weather charts, and we'll just jump right into the weather chart. What's important here is we can see we started planting on April 10, April 11. We harvested corn on September 25. And what we can do here is oftentimes when you upload planting data, for some reason, maybe it's because it's in 2019, it's not showing up. Where this little tractor symbol is, it would be parked basically where you planted, and then you would have a harvest date, and it would be, you would have that little symbol here wherever you harvested here in September. In this case, I'm wanting to analyze the data. I'm going to manually select April the 11th, because that's when we started planting. And then now it's processing that. It's going to start our timeline at April the 11th. And I don't want to get too wrapped up in what GDUs to black layer are, but these products here that we had on this field are somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe, let's just say that they hit black layer on August the 14th approximately. And now we're going to analyze data basically inside this growing season. What can be very informative here is that we can see field events that occurred, like if you had planting, different things would show up, applications. We can see how much rainfall occurred and what days it occurred and how much. We can select that day, and it tells us that 3.27 inches fell on July the 5th. The high temperature for that day was 77, the low was 68, GDU accumulation was 23. And we had 1,750 GDUs accumulated as of that date from planting. So basically, if this product here, had somewhere around 1,400 GDUs to mid-silk, we could come back here and find the date that has that, which is going to be somewhere around June the 20th. And let's say we're between our two products at the end of the year, we notice a little bit of a yield difference of 4 or 5 bushel or something, and we were just curious, both good products, both have served us well, what's going on and what happened here. We could, let's just say the one product on June 23 was in mid-silk. It was dropping the most pollen, and it was doing its thing, and here we had a rain of 1.61 inches. And then in 2019, we had ample rain for everything, but let's just say right prior to this, a shorter season product hit, mid-silk, somewhere around 1,300 GDUs on July the 20th, 3 or 4 days before. And let's say before this that we had a dry stretch of about 2 weeks, and it was super dry, and this earlier season product was trying to pollinate. It might have more misses or kernel abortion due to this because of its stress that it was going through during this critical time period. And this here has been very useful on our farm of determining what was really going on. Because oftentimes when you have good products on your farm, differences occur because of the climate and the environment which it was in. And this is going to be very helpful in dissecting your farm's information to know what's happened and why. And we can break this down. We can see our temperatures. We can see if there was a spike in a temperature, if there had been, there wasn't, but if there was, and could have, let's say we got up in the upper 90s, that could have been another thing. If we cooled down during this time period where we can see we actually did, and if this was a cool down into the mid 70s during pollination, was very conducive for pollination during this time frame. And if there had been outside of this time frame, it might have been very different. And we can also see a critical rainfall on July the 5th. That is also another part, very critical period. We can check, we could print off this report here on weather and compare it to other fields. Let's say another field did not get this beneficial rain on June the 5th, as we had happened in 2020. I can point out different fields that did. We missed the rain. And this critical time period missed this rain. Some fields might have been very different. And this here can also help refresh our memory on exactly what happened on which field. Down here we see the accumulation of GDUs. We can dissect that. We can analyze where it was at. We can see this has been a pretty even year in 2019 as far as GDU accumulation. We didn't have extreme temperatures, but in warmer years you can see this here would spike even more. You can see even here as accumulation occurs, fairly steady climb. Sometimes though in some years with hot temperatures it can spike more on a certain day and can be indicative of stress occurring in the plant. So this, anyway, that's our weather charts. It can be very informative, helping us there. We can come over here to corn planting. We just started on what looks like on the 10th, and the majority of it was planted on the 11th. We can see different pieces of information. So there's the product, the rate, speed in which we planted, row spacing, seed spacing. Anyway, we move on here. Here's applications. I believe these were applications of the starter fertilizer that we're applying with the planter, but if you had a sprayer or sprayed later and uploaded your data, it would show up here. It would give you that timeline, being able to know when you sprayed. This could be helpful in this timeline as far as analyzing what was sprayed and the timing or the corn stage, which we could go to weather charts and we could recreate what corn stage was probably like during that time, and within reason. Finally, we come to the corn harvest, and this is probably the most exciting part of our analysis of looking at data. We can look at yield, moisture. We can see a little bit of difference between the two products. Elevation. Combine is dropping breadcrumbs as you're harvesting and recording the elevation of your machine. This here can be helpful as far as seeing where if you had a wet hole, if yield was lower in a certain part of the field, you can analyze those wet spots in low areas and see if they're affecting yield. We also have speed, yield trend, very informative. This here is helpful as far as being able to just, instead of getting axle wrapped over exact bushels and getting all bogged down with too much data, you can break it down basically into 3 zones. Was the yield here above average? Was it average, or was it below average? And here you can just take a look at that. Return on investment. I have no idea if the numbers in this are right for this formula, but there's another part of FARMserver which we won't go into today, that you can set up all your parameters of costs and inputs versus using this yield and with pricing or commodity prices, which you can set yourself, or you can use the default number which goes off an average of close for so many days. And you can analyze the your return on investment. Was it a positive return? How much? Was it a negative return? We could see some reds here. Look next to the trees. Technically, we're losing money here for what we're putting into it. It might be a good idea to reduce our population of seed here, or maybe not fertilize this because it's really, we're just going nowhere here. You can make decisions here based upon parts of your field. Or you might say, here's a lower area. What's going on here? Do we need to be a little bit more careful for our soil sampling and analyzing this portion of the field? Or why is this field in itself doing better than another field nearby? What is different? What things do they share that are the same? What things do they not share? And you're able to make profitable decisions. And then the other thing we can do is here, go back on the left-hand side, we can hit this compare button. Basically, this is splitting it into 2 different sections of our screen, so we can analyze them side by side. Here we can see, maybe we can do elevation on one side and yield on the other, and see if there's anything different as far as yield to elevation. As we get higher in a wet year, we get higher elevation, and their yields go up. And we can also go down here and we can select a different operation. We could do something like, instead of corn harvest, we could do the corn planting. And we could do maybe the speed of our planter and compare it over here to harvest yield and see was there any correlation to planter speed and yield, and analyze different pieces of information like that. We could also pull up soil types on one side and compare that to the other side. Once we're done with compare, we can hit this little X button up here and close it down. The other interesting thing I think that is a very helpful tool that I'm going to cover in this video is your Polygon, or your query tool, I should say. And you can choose circle if you have a pivot. You can choose rectangle if you just want to draw a box. Or you can choose Polygon, which I think is very useful. Probably some of the most useful parts of these tools is the Polygon, because you can go along here and draw like I am here in the bottom part of the screen in this middle. And you can draw in line with your rows and be able to double click when you get done with the shape, and it pulls up a query result showing your yield, your acres, and your moisture. Here it's dividing it, in this tab it's dividing it by soil type. We can see there's definitely a difference, like maybe 7 or 8 bushel or more of differences in soil type. We can also separate this here by product and see the difference here between product. We have like a bushel and a half or so right here. And we can also see that we have about a 0.4 to 0.5% moisture difference between the two products. And so anyway, this here pretty much covers it. There is once you want to clear this tool, you just go down here and click the query tool and it clears it. There's this little green circle here. It has a few other menu options, such as selecting soil type, adding it to your map or name. You can click print. It prints out a nice little printout of exactly what you see here with the summary here along this left-hand side, which shows total bushels, average yield, average moisture, return on investment, etc. Or you can just do a print screen from your computer. One thing I did want to cover here before we go is on the corn harvest side, you see the 3 little dots here. That before you get into analyzing your data, you may want to come in here and do a post calibration, where it pulls up your wet weight. You type in your wet pounds, or you can type in your total actual yield, monitor yield versus what you want to say your yield to bushels total was, and you hit apply. And once you do that, it will process it, and in a little few minutes you can come back and see your updated accurate yield levels. So that's important before you get started. Probably should have mentioned it first, but I'll mention it now. So you can work with it later on your data. So anyway, I think the edit here just changes your crop type, by the way, and then you've got a yield cleaner, and basically that goes along your ends where your combine starts and stops, and just kind of cleans up your yield for your data as well. Anyway, I think that pretty much covers everything that I wanted to talk about. Hopefully it was helpful to you in analyzing some of the most important parts of your farm operation, and that is crop data as it relates towards profitability. See you next time.